Reddit ask me anything. Legally dead for 22 minutes. Cardiac arrest at age 19. Ask me anything. Just a little background info to start I guess. No family history of heart complications or health problems. Doctors never did determine a cause. Spent 4-5-ish days in a medically induced coma. Surprisingly minimal brain damage. Although a pretty sustainable amount for 22 minutes without oxygen. Views on life changed, or any other significant differences, in comparison to your pre and post cardiac arrest life? THX for the ask me anything. This is probably hard to do. Definitely, as I super briefly mentioned to another user, I remember thinking years ago I wanted to die, even after living through a suicide attempt when I was 13. The arrest happened when I was 19. I feel silly now forever thinking I didn't want to live or experience more. Even in the past couple years, I'm currently 22. I've experienced so much that never would have been possible if my life ended there. It really did make me appreciate what I have. I really do cherish every day now. And I constantly need to remind myself the end can come without any warning. On the day of my arrest, it was a completely normal day. I did everything I would have normally done, then went to bed at the end of the day. This all happened at 4 AM. Yeah, that's crazy. Glad you're still here. Thank you, friend. I remember thinking years ago I wanted to die, but looking back now, I've experienced so much since then. I wasn't ready to go. Do you have to take any meds now? Surprisingly no. They still were never able to find a cause either, which was why they kept me there so long. They just weren't sure what to do with me. I went through thousands of tests that I usually tend to block them out now. My memory just seems to blend it all together. Eventually they ended up deciding on giving me an ICD unit. It basically monitors and records your heart rhythm. Then I go in every month and they hold something up to my side. The thing is under my skin, and it pulls up all my heart records, graph and everything. It's pretty cool, but it pisses me off that my heart has never done anything strange since. That was 2 years ago and it's beat normally since then. Sometimes it pisses me off they gave me such an invasive surgery and medical device, all for it to never be used. But I guess that was the only option in their minds since they never did pinpoint a cause. How did you feel when someone eventually explained what happened? Sick, confused, and overall just gross. I was really embarrassed to tell anyone it happened. Even doctors would say shit like, oh, you're the youngest person I've seen on the cardiac floor. Do you smoke or have family history of this kind of stuff? The answer was always no. What does cardiac arrest feel like, if anything, or is it just nothing? How sore was your chest from the chest compressions? What did that feel like? What does a coma feel like? Do you remember anything, or was it just nothing? Did you go to Afterlife? If yes, what was it like? Did your chest hurt from where the ED was applied to your chest and where you were shocked? My memory from the whole day just doesn't exist. It's strange, and still bothers me to this day. It happened at 4 AM but I don't remember the whole day. My partner at the time said I woke up and said I'm going to pass out. Then my eyes rolled back in my head and I dropped. Insanely sore. Like 4 weeks after. This was 2 years ago, but TBH, even if I poke myself in the ribs wrong I still get some pain. Mostly shivers. Unfortunately I don't remember the event or what it felt like. Likely from the brain damage is what the doctor said. Sorry for the shitty answer. I only really remember waking up from the coma, not what it felt like. My whole family was looking down at me, hospital lighting style. I asked what happened and I remember my mom being really annoyed and saying your heart stopped. Apparently that was the 5th time I woke up and she had already explained, which was why she was so pissed. Mayo brain damage. Kinda answered above. For the first little while I remembered nothing. But week 4 in the hospital I kept waking up at 3 AM-ish with new memories coming back to me. For example, the first one I had was remembering what I ate for lunch that day. Week 5 in the hospital I woke up at 3 AM with a memory that came to me so clearly, of a light at the end of a long tunnel. People were screaming and crying and the light got bigger until it almost my whole vision, then was instantly sucked away while following a loud scream. Yes, the ED aftermath was insane. I refused to be touched for the longest time and was overall just so tender. Usually they give people about 5 shocks before calling it quits, but I ended up getting to meet my paramedics months later. And they said they gave me 7 because I was so young and they knew I'd handle it better than say a 60-year-old or any older folks they usually end up using the ED on. I'm a hypochondriac and this scares the shit out of me. I already worry about having a heart attack, cancer or strokes. Did you develop any anxiety because of this? Can you live a normal life without thinking about it every day? Yes, I lived with some pretty constant anxiety for a long time. Thankfully they've found my perfect level of medications, which, for others reading, no it does not insta-fix you, but it slows everything down enough to use the coping mechanisms I've learned. Turns the gibberish and messy notes into fine print as I'd say. I totally get where you're coming from though. Shit is scary. Just remember your odds are so low, so try to remember to live freely as you've been slightly blessed to be able to do so. Coming from that 1% that is myself. Although I completely understand why this shit scares you. It's bloody terrifying. Did you experience anything while you died or was it just black, like sleeping? If you were to ask me while I was in the hospital I would have said I experienced nothing. Time just blended seamlessly with waking up. However, after a couple weeks my memory started coming back. For example, I finally remembered what I ate for lunch that day. Eventually I remember seeing a tiny light at the end of a tunnel and lots of screams from familiar voices. The light got bigger until one ear-piercing scream made the light suck away and just like that it was gone. I have no idea what any of this means. It's just all I remember. Sounds like your family panicking. That's kinda what I thought too. Where are you from? If you are from USA, how much you paid for your medical bills? I'm from Canada thankfully. I'm broke as duck also, so I would have rather just died if I was in the US. Haha. All hail free healthcare. My sister recently died after being in cardiac arrest for a horrible 45 minutes. I still can't wrap my head around it. I wish I knew if she was in any pain or if it was like she died in her sleep. She was in the ICU for something else and then later went into cardiac arrest. They worked her for hours after, keeping her alive until we had to let her go. I just wish I knew if she was scared or in any pain. Thanks for listening. I'm so sorry to hear about your sister. That must have been so unbelievably hard. If it's any consolation at all, when I was out I felt no pain. Your brain seems to stop functioning with the deprivation of oxygen. Just remember, although it was so terrifying for family members and those around, it's likely she experienced none of it. I'm sorry, I know that doesn't help, but I hope it brings some peace of mind that in her mind she did not suffer. Message me if you need someone to talk to. Believe it or not, this happened to me in April of this year. I'm 23, went out for a jog, woke up 7 days later. Crazy statistic, you and I, going into cardiac arrest outside a hospital has survival rate of 8%. You and I are some damn lucky people. Best of luck, trauma buddy. That's so insanely scary. I can definitely relate to the memory, then just instantly waking up like no time is passed. So strange. We are definitely very lucky, trauma buddy. What was the first thing you thought about when you woke up? I was embarrassed tbh. My whole family was around me and I hadn't seen some of them in a long time. We've never really been that close. What kinds of tests have they ran on you to try and determine a cause? I'm glad you are alright though and haven't had to undergo a serious surgery at least. Everything under the moon. I sound silly not remembering all, but to put it in retrospect, they did about 9 a day, and I was in the hospital for 5 weeks, so we had time to even run a bunch too. And thank you, me too. I did have a surgery for internal ICD unit which sucked, but overall it could have been a way more serious surgery. I'm mostly nervous about them going in again and changing the battery in a few years, as if the scars weren't already gnarly enough. Woman face palming. How did they know to continue doing CPR on you for another 22 minutes, I wonder? TBH, they didn't know. It was just pure panic from my ex's family not knowing what to do while waiting for paramedics to arrive. Although I wasn't taking breaths, if you were to ask them why them kept going, they would likely said they didn't know what else to do and didn't want to sit around doing nothing while waiting for the ambulance. Sorry if this seems rude, but I'm really curious. To what extent was your brain damaged? It's not rude, no worries. My short-term memory was completely gone. Happened in December when I was 19, and I couldn't remember what happened for Halloween. I couldn't remember my locker combo, so they had to cut it off when I got back to school. My day-to-day life would be living present day normally, but I'd forget what happened the eye before after it had passed. I had a really hard time reading again and storing knowledge. I still do, although I'm 22 now. I find myself sometimes reading a page of a book and realizing I didn't retain any of the information. I usually reread it about 3 times before storing any of the info. I've been getting better and trying to work on it every day. Are you able to practice any kind of physical activity now, or would you risk something by raising your heart rate? I'm a runner and sometimes the effort is so high on my heart that I'm worried it may stop at any time. It's the first thing I thought of reading your post. Thankfully I have an ICD heart monitor now, meaning it's safe for me to exercise because my heart rhythm is constantly recorded. The neat thing about the ICD is that it'll shock you back if there's a irregular rhythm. Confusingly enough, that's never happened, but I guess it's good for peace of mind. But damn, I bet as a runner you'd worry about that for sure. The heart is a crazy muscle, isn't it? Any history of drug or alcohol use? I am assuming not, as you didn't mention anything in the post, but had to ask as I was curious and no one has asked yet. Slightly, but nothing out of the ordinary. They did do a couple toxicology reports that came up with nothing. I've always been a social drinker, but this night was one where I was waiting for a paycheck, so earlier we were all just chilling around a friend's house chatting and listening to music because no one had booze money. As for drugs, just casual weed smoking. And I did trip on acid once years ago before this. I did tell the doctors that as well, though, just to be safe. Didn't want to leave any uncovered ground. Do you think you treat people better now? No, some people become more positive and some more negative after near-death experience. Good question. I've always treated people better than myself, in my opinion. If anything, I think I started treating myself better. I don't beat down so hard on myself anymore. I've always been so forgiving with everyone, so I've been trying to offer myself the same forgiveness. It definitely made me more positive, thankfully. I feel bad for those who come out negative and mad at the world. Were you overweight when you were in your teens? What if someone in your family might have some cardiac problems but they don't know about them, or they know but they don't want anybody to worry about their health? Are you an atheist like me? Nah, I was what they would have called average weight at the time. I've always been very tall for a girl and around 140 pounds. I guess that could be possible as well. They only went back as far as my great-great-grandparents. But maybe it's possible generations before had dealt with heart complications. Guess we will never really know, unfortunately, and I'm not quite sure. I know so little about atheism, or any other religion for that matter, but I'm definitely closest to that versus Catholic or any other religion. Brain necrosis starts at 3 minutes without oxygen. You did not breathe for 22? I received constant CPR until paramedics arrived with the aid. So although I was not taking to the breaths, they were still being pumped into my system, if that makes sense. This was something that confused me for a really long time, and still kinda does even after the doctors explained it. If it wasn't for the response time for those around me, I would have died waiting for the ambulance. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content. It's free and that's a great price.